Okay, this might actually be the smartest budget phone we've seen in a very long time. Because somehow, CMF managed to build a phone that looks different, feels premium, and still costs way less than people expected. And honestly, Apple and Samsung should genuinely be worried about this thing. The first thing you notice is the design. Most budget phones feel boring. Same camera bump. Same cheap plastic feel. Same forgettable look. But this actually has personality. The removable back, visible screws, modular accessories. It feels like someone finally tried to make smartphones fun again. And honestly, a lot of people will buy this phone simply because it doesn't look like every other phone on the market. But design means nothing if the experience feels slow. Luckily, that's not the case here. Everything just feels surprisingly smooth for the price. Apps open quickly. Scrolling feels responsive. Animations feel clean. And for normal daily use, this thing handles almost everything without feeling frustrating. Social media, YouTube, gaming, multitasking. No weird lag. No annoying stutters. And honestly, that's already enough for most people. Now let's talk about the display. Because this part genuinely surprised me. The screen actually looks clean and vibrant. Colors pop, brightness feels solid. And watching videos on this thing feels way better than you'd expect at this price. Then there's the battery life. And this is where budget phones usually compromise hard. But somehow, this phone just keeps going. You can easily get through a full day without stressing about charging. And honestly, that's where this phone becomes dangerous. Because most people care more about battery life and smooth performance than crazy benchmark numbers. And honestly, that's what makes this phone feel so different from most budget devices right now. Because for years, cheap smartphones always felt like they were sacrificing something important. Bad displays, weak cameras, slow performance, cheap materials. There was always a catch somewhere. But this phone doesn't really feel that way. And honestly, that's exactly why people are paying attention to it. Because instead of trying to compete with flagship phones using crazy specs, CMF focused on something way smarter. Experience. The phone feels fun, different, modern. And weirdly enough, that matters more than people realize. Because most people don't actually care about benchmark numbers anymore. They care about how a phone feels during real everyday use. And surprisingly, this thing handles daily usage way better than most people would expect. That's why phones like this are starting to become dangerous for bigger companies. Because once people realize they can get a genuinely good experience without spending flagship money, it completely changes the market. Now, cameras. Is this beating a flagship phone? Obviously not. But here's the crazy part. In good lighting, the photos actually look really good. Sharp details. Nice colors. Solid dynamic range. And unless you compare it directly to a 1000 flagship, most people probably won't even notice the difference. Video quality is also surprisingly decent for social media content. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts. And honestly, that's exactly who this phone is for. People who want something cool, fast, different, and affordable. Not everyone wants to spend flagship money anymore. And phones like this are proving that very quickly. That's why CMF is getting attention so fast. Because this doesn't feel like a boring cheap phone. It feels like a genuinely smart purchase. And honestly, this is the part where a lot of budget phones completely fall apart. Because usually, once you actually start using cheaper phones every single day, you begin noticing all the compromises. Slow camera apps, laggy animations, weak battery life after a few months, cheap materials that don't feel great to hold. But weirdly enough, CMF actually paid attention to the small details here. And that changes everything. The phone feels polished. The software feels clean. And the overall experience feels much more premium than people expect at this price point. And honestly, that's becoming a huge problem for bigger smartphone brands. Because people are starting to realize something important. Most flagship phones today are getting ridiculously expensive, while improvements are becoming smaller every year. And phones like this are exposing that reality very quickly. Because when a budget phone handles social media, gaming, videos, multitasking, and daily usage this well, most people stop caring about crazy flagship specs. They just want something that feels good to use. And that's exactly why this phone is getting so much attention online right now. Because this doesn't feel like an ultra-budget phone. It feels like a phone that understands what normal people actually want. And honestly, that's way more important than flexing benchmark scores most people will never even use. And honestly, that's exactly why phones like this are becoming dangerous for bigger brands. Because once people realize they don't need to overspend on smartphones anymore, everything changes. Most people are wasting money on smartphones. Don't be one of them. And if you want more smart tech finds like this, subscribe before everyone else discovers them first. Full links are in the description below.